of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Peterborough, and the Midlands through our partner stations across the nation. Of course, if you're listening to us on Link FM, Unity FM, and Salam Radio up and down the United Kingdom, welcome to all of you tonight. This is Friday Night Live with me, Abdullah. Of course, joining me in the studio as well is none other than my very special and always endeavored co-host, Zafar Saab. Zafar Saab, assalamu alaikum. How's your week been, Zafar Saab?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, any highlights? Any storms hit your way?
No storms, just waiting for one apparently.
Waiting for one, that's right, because in case you haven't heard, there's a rare red wind warning. A rare red wind, that sounds a bit dangerous. A red wind.
Dangerous, very dangerous.
A red wind warning issued as a new storm, Deir, approaches the UK. But apparently, if you are in the southeast or east or somewhere up north, you should be, touch wood, inshallah, okay. But the Met Office is saying that it is posing a major danger to life in coastal parts of Wales and the southwest of England. So if you have friends and families in that part of the world, you might want to give them a call and tell them to heed the weather warnings. But anyways, also coming up on tonight's program, we've got two very, very interesting topics for the next roughly 55 minutes or so. In a moment, we're going to be speaking to a couple of very special guests on the situation on the ground in Syria. And Zafar Saab, I'm going to come to you as well, because I'd love to know your analysis on what is going on in Syria. Suddenly, Syria has just come out of the blue, or has it? Certainly, it hasn't been in the spotlight for the last few years or months even. We've been hearing about the situation in Gaza. We've been hearing about the situation in Iraq and other countries, but not necessarily Syria. It's been pretty quiet of late. Of course, Ukraine's been on the agenda as well with the Russian situation there and the Trump agenda, but not much on Syria. So that coming up in a moment. And also coming up in about 25 minutes time tonight, Zafar Saab, we're going to be talking about that great British favorite, how to make a cup of tea.
Cup of tea.
Chai. And personally, I'm into Garak chai at the moment. I'm going through a Garak chai phase. Sugar-free, of course. How about yourself? So, are you a Garak person?
I like tea, but unfortunately, I can't take tea. So
you can't take tea. Jalo, we'll talk about that offline.
That's right.
We'll have a discussion about that because there are different ways of making teas, and many of you veterans watching and listening tonight will know that actually you can make a cup of tea in lots of different ways. Some people, what they do is they boil the water up to boiling point, and then they stick the tea bag in, and they put the milk in straight away, and they start stirring. How do you make a proper cup of tea? That's the question we're going to be answering and solving tonight on Friday Night Live in roughly 20 minutes time. You do not want to miss that part of tonight's program. And guess what? Before we go on to the first topic, I also want to say a special hello to any of my listeners. You know who you are, who happen to work or happen to go to a certain high school in Luton. Got lots of fans tuning in tonight. Apparently, rumor has spread that I am a radio presenter on Inspire FM, and lots of people tuning in.
The fame. The fame of it.
Fame is amazing. So a special hello to year 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, and any 11s, and any teachers listening as well from said school. I'm not going to mention the school just to keep everyone safeguarded, because safeguarding is very important to Saab in this day and age. Anyway, we're going to go on to talk about safeguarding. We're going to go on to Syria now, which is not a very safe topic, actually. And in case you're wondering, listeners, this topic has all been on the back of a 13-year civil war that has apparently roared back into prominence as insurgents have seized a place in Syria called Aleppo in a shock offensive, marking a major threat to President Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime. Now, the question, is it brutal? Is it not? That's what I'm going to be asking my guests who are on the line right now. I'm delighted to welcome right now onto Friday Night Live, Bashar Ali, commentator and khatib. He is no stranger to this program, and we're delighted to welcome him back. Assalamu alaikum, Bashar. How are you tonight?
Walaikum salam. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing very well, alhamdulillah. Thanks for joining us. And also, let me go ahead and welcome for his debut on tonight's program and Friday Night Live, hopefully the first of many appearances on this program. I'm delighted to welcome Robin Yassin, who is a co-author of Burning Country, Syrians in Revolution and War, and he's also the chief English editor of the ISIS Prisons Museum. Assalamu alaikum. Robin, welcome to you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thanks for joining us live, gentlemen, on tonight. And of course, we are beaming out to the good people of Luton and surrounding areas tonight, and also to the good people of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Peterborough, and the Midlands across the nation. So let me start with you, if I may, Robin. And can you just give us a quick overview? And I know it's a long topic, but very quickly, if anyone's tuning in today and hasn't heard of what's happening in Syria, could you just give us a very quick kind of 30-second to a minute overview of suddenly what started to happen over the past week or so, and what's changed? Over to you, Robin.
30 seconds. Well, this goes back to the revolution against the Assad regime, which began in 2011. And the revolution was kind of successful in destroying the regime as it was then, but the regime was then rescued by local warlords, Iranian militias, the Russian Air Force, and indirectly ISIS. And at the moment, all of those forces are weak. ISIS was defeated by America. The Iranian militias, for other reasons, have just been hammered by Israel, and Russia is busy in Ukraine. So therefore, the underlying unsustainability of the Assad regime has come to the fore. And at the same time, the rebel forces seem much more organized politically, socially, and militarily than ever before. So they've swept out of the corner of northwest Syria, where they and millions of Syrians driven from elsewhere in Syria have been held for the last 4 years without the lines moving much. And suddenly the Assad regime appears to be collapsing. So they've taken Aleppo and then Hama city, where up to 40,000 people were murdered by the Assad regime in 1982. And now they're advancing on Homs. And it looks like the Assad regime may be in its last days.
Very interesting. I really am very grateful for that succinct overview of exactly what's going on. Bashar, if I may ask you your reaction to what's going on, was this inevitable, or are you surprised with the current developments in Syria? And maybe even before you answer that, maybe we can go back to why you reckon Syria has not been on the worldwide agenda as it is now on the headlines for the last few years, because we've hardly heard of the brutality, as many would call it, of the Assad regime until just this week. Why do you think Syria has not made the headlines of late?
It's very sort of a simple explanation of that. Headlines are generated by people who have particular issues they want to amplify and project, and the media is, pardon my bluntness, but very often the mistress or the prostitute of the establishment, wherever they are.
Apart from inspiring them, of course, just to make that clear.
Yeah, there are exceptions. Absolutely right. I'm talking about the media that runs these shows internationally, globally. Now, when you look at, as Robin has said, the speed with which things have happened reflects the changing dynamics and the realpolitik in terms of on the ground. So who are the key players? Russia and Iran sustained Syria. And we don't look at this through a sectarian premise or a prism. This is completely not the way to look at these things. We look at politics as is. Iran had its interests, from the time of Hafiz al-Assad onwards, and the Russians have their, because Russians have Tartus, which was opened by Brezhnev, if I'm not mistaken, or in the Brezhnev era of the Soviet Union, which was the naval base for the Russian fleet in the Mediterranean. They've pulled their assets out over the last couple of days. So what we're seeing is effectively Turkey is calling a lot of the shots in Syria. And that by that, then you have to accept that there is a American nod and a wink to what's going on. So what's happened is effectively, as Robin has said, the Iranians have been taking a hammering vis-a-vis the Hezbollah presence in Lebanon. And of course, with the altercation of sorts, it's not really a fight, it's a bit of a scrap between them and Iran. So in a nutshell, I think where we are at the moment is the changing geopolitics, where Russia is occupied with Ukraine and cannot afford to deploy assets in Syria as required. The Iranians are struggling, and America and Erdogan have seen an opportunity. Now, of course, Recep Tayyip Erdogan has multiple interests here. 5 million Syrians live in Turkey, and we should congratulate and recognize that the Turkish nation has taken 5 million desperate refugees, but politically he wants them to go back. He can't do that unless he can say it's safe. And number two, the SDF, aka PKK, the Kurdish nationalists, they want to establish a state carving out of Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Iraq as well. So he is looking at multiple realities. So I think it's realpolitik at its ugliest or best, whichever way you want to look at it.
Lots of geodynamics happening there. But let me go to, thanks for that, Bashar. I'll come back to you in a second. But Robin, let me go to you and ask you, apparently the group behind the current so-called insurgency is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS. Can you give us a bit of information about that group? Who are they? Who's leading them? What affiliations do they have? Bashar mentioned something about a connection to Turkey and maybe some Turkish influence. What's your understanding of this group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham?
I think we mustn't overestimate the Turkish influence or the idea that the US has given a nod to this, because the Turks have been trying quite hard to normalize with Assad. The US indirectly too. The Gulf states, especially the UAE, have been trying very hard to normalize with Assad. I don't believe for a moment that the US or Israel want representative governments in the Arab world. I don't believe they want democracies. I don't believe they want anything closer to a democracy. And I think that the narrative that the Syrian revolution was driven by or even assisted by the West is a false narrative, which if we had a long time, I would pick apart. But your question about HTS, which, because the Syrian National Army, that's a collection of ex-Free Army militias which are under Turkish control. They haven't had much of an effect on this. They've been fighting the SDF/PKK, but they haven't been sweeping down against the regime in the way that HTS and its allies have. Now, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, began as part of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then it split from ISIS and fought ISIS, and ISIS went in that Khawarij, very extremist, very oppressive direction, and ended up being defeated in the end by everybody, although it served lots of people's interests for a while. And then HTS, Nusra at the time, went in the opposite direction, and it tried to moderate, and it eventually broke from Al-Qaeda Central. It became more of a Syrian national rather than a transnational jihadi outfit. It didn't field a Hisba Diwan or a religious police to police ordinary people for wearing the wrong clothes or saying the wrong things, as ISIS had done. It practiced outreach to religious minorities. So you've had Christians and other minorities living happily in Idlib under their rule. It's still an authoritarian militia which has arrested opponents and tortured them. At the same time, it tolerates protest. And its behavior in the last days has been surprising and remarkably good, remarkably hopeful. The way in which, I didn't expect this, to be honest, but the way in which they have negotiated with the leaders of religious minorities, the way in which in Halab, in Aleppo, women are walking around unveiled, unharassed. The Christians have got their Christmas trees up and their churches are open. There has been zero looting. More to the point, in the Shia towns, Zahra and Nubal in the Aleppo countryside, which hosted murderous Shia militias, and therefore more than the Christians in Aleppo would be the natural targets, perhaps, of revenge attacks. In those towns, the Shia militias have run away and left the Shia civilians, and they are being treated very well indeed. There has been zero looting, no revenge attacks, no disorder.
Well, sorry to interrupt you. This sounds like almost like a renaissance, I don't even want to call them an ISIS V2, because they're nothing like ISIS. And anyone who knows anything about Islam will know that the so-called Islamic State was anything but that, and was full of lots of interesting ideas, but no real control, and lots of things out of control, you could argue, even centrally, without critiquing individuals, and going down that path. But what it sounds like, let me go to Bashar for your reactions on this. Bashar, it sounds like they're doing everything that the Assad regime is not, and also they don't have if we can call it this, the extremism of maybe the previous incarnations of uprisings that we've seen in the past in Syria? I mean, your take on that, Basharat?
No, I think what Robin said, to echo their effective mutation from what they were to what they are now, that's an absolutely excellent sort of summary of that. Of course, HTS is a designated terrorist organization by many many governments.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a political decision. I mean, look, Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams were famously representative of the IRA, as were the the loyalists, and then all of a sudden they became buddies and met the Queen. So this is very much a political decision, but we've got to be mindful of that, because obviously we've seen what's been happening in the United Kingdom and America. But broader than that group, what you're seeing is that this predominantly the people here are from Syria. Unlike ISIS, which were a bunch of claptrap collection of people from all over the world who had no link to Mosul, in Syria, originally from Deir, it was an indigenous uprising. The Arab Spring was an indigenous expression of wanting rule by Islam. All of the Ashab, Yurid Asqat al-Nizam, you remember this echoing, the people wanted to have a new system to collapse the regime, which was the people, to echo what Robin has said, Christians, Druze, Shia have lived Islam for the best part of 1300. They all existed and exist. And therefore, Islam has never been of sectarian persuasion. This sectarianism is a cancer, and it is basically exploited. So what I see at the moment is that the Syrian soldiers for Assad are not willing to die for a losing cause. So they're melting away. And what we will see now, because today in Damascus, there's a lot of footage on X of gunfire allegedly from Damascus at the military headquarters, drone attacks on the presidential palace. So if that is right, and by the way, Hems, if that falls, inshallah, then the road is open. And Syria has seen far worse. Bilad al-Sham, Prophet ﷺ praised it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has praised the wider Bilad al-Sham. From an Aqidah perspective, as Muslims, we have absolute yaqeen and certainty that people of Sham, Palestine, Jordan, Sykes-Picot Syria is not Islamic Syria. Islamic Syria is south of what is modern-day Turkey, Jordan, Palestine, and Syria. These people saw off the Mongols when Qalawun, Salehi, the second battle of Hims, saw off the Crusaders. So people of Bilad al-Sham are blessed people.
They're highly resilient people, aren't they? Yeah.
They've resisted tyranny and brutality for a very long time. And the current manifestation, don't forget, it traces its origins back to Sykes-Picot. Both Zionism and Baathism have the same parents. And Michel Aflaq famously, because the French had control of Lebanon and modern-day Syria, Britain had control of Palestine and Jordan. And it reflects that. So current-day manifestations, what you have, these carcinogenics which have infected the body of the Muslims in the Middle East with all of the horrible tyranny and oppression that's come, has been supported, created, nurtured by the post-colonial, neo-colonial regime.
Thank you for that. I love the words that Bashar is using today as I've heard carcinogenic and I've heard mutation so far. So those are the two I've picked up. But Zabasab, your reactions to what you've heard from our wonderful guests so far. Like, do you think America wants what's happening to happen as we're seeing it play out? Have they kind of endorsed this and they want to now a refresh in Syria?
To be honest, I'm not sure I can add any more to experts have
really
have already
first
said.
time for that. I've never.
But I like to add my own angle to this. But really, one thing that we can set aside now is that these groups have been presented as Islamists, and it's quite clear they're not Islamists, because if they were Islamists, right, then they would have been the first ones to speak out against what happened in Gaza, and it would have gone down in Gaza and fought alongside the people there. So they're not Islamists. As such, there are people who want to make a difference in their own country, and it's quite right. I think what Robin said. There are forces within the Middle East who don't want people, governments which are representative of people, basically, and I think Saudi and UAE are the two, basically. And whatever they see as a threat, they will act on it, basically.
Yeah.
So you can say these people, are people who are naturally, Syrian and local and against the government, but they are supported, right? They are supported for a political cause. And I suspect that political cause resonates with Saudi, UAE, and potentially Turkey as well. And they've seen an opportunity. They've seen an opportunity that Hezbollah, who has been a major fighting force in the Syrian army, is being distracted. It's been, bombed and it's been relocated, and its leadership has been destroyed. So they've seen an opportunity to sort of move in. I'm not saying for 1 minute, right, that what was happening in between, because it was away from the cameras and was stability. And Bashar al-Assad is a butcher and he's done terrible things. But I have to say, talking about real politics, you have to try and see what's happening there in a global sort of context and a local context as well. And I'm a little bit skeptical of the fact that these people are going to bring positive change to Syria, and I think they're just basically acting at the behest of local.
That's just. I'm sorry, but can I just jump in there?
Yeah. I was going to bring that to Robin first of all. So, Robin, your reactions to that? Is this
my reaction to that is that it kind of like takes away the agency of the Syrian people, and it's when you zoom out too much. And when you just see Syria as an adjunct to the conflicts that you happen to already know about, you get rid of all the specificity and you ignore the agency of the Syrian people. And a lot of people are doing that. The idea that these people are not Islamists, because if they were Islamists, they would have been the first to talk about Gaza, is just, I'm sorry, but it's ignorant. Because, in Idlib, there were demonstrations every Friday for Gaza. And the people in Idlib who are starving, and most of them living in tents because they've been driven from elsewhere in Syria, gathered huge amounts of money and sent them to people in Gaza. Nobody loves the people in the south of Bilad al-Sham like the people in the north of Bilad al-Sham. So these ideas are, I'm sorry, ridiculous. What we have with the Syrian regime, Hafez al-Assad was the defense minister in 1967 when Israel took the Golan Heights. They didn't actually take the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights was actually given.
Gifted,
Hafez al-Assad gave the order to the Syrian army to withdraw a long time before the Israeli army arrived. So this is the regime we're dealing with, and this is why it's been kept in power. This is why when Iran was pouring tens of thousands of Shia militia from all over the world, Pakistan, etc., into Syria to save the Assad regime, the Obama administration did a sanctions-busting deal with Iran. They didn't have any problem at all with the Iranians rescuing. This is also a regime which has murdered 650,000 as a bare minimum Syrians. It has expelled.
Robin, let me ask you this question quickly because we've only got a couple of minutes left.
Worth less than any other people. So this ridiculous campist nonsense that they're just fools of the white guy is offensive, racist.
Robin, I'm going to ask you this question very quickly.
The language of our enemies, and sorry to shout, but I've got no tolerance left for it. After 13 years of Muslims, I expect kind of authoritarian leftists to fall for this campus nonsense, but not our Muslim brothers and sisters. And
Robin, let me ask you this question.
Syrians, read more books.
Thank you so much, Robin. Very passionate there, and I think a lot of people listening.
Can I just come in?
Will concur with you. Bashar, I can see vigorously nodding his head as well.
Bashar, come in for 1 point.
Go for it, very quickly. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, what Robin is saying as a matter of substance, absolutely right. But look, the context of what is happening in Syria is that the Turks have controlled Idlib and the north. They've had a lot of influence, and the struggle was indigenous. It is still indigenous. It's important to bear in mind. Now, where this goes, we will see. We all want Hafez al-Assad's legacy to be buried in the sand in the desert.
Very quickly, we've only got 30 seconds.
Where it deserves to be. So I'm hopeful that all of Syria will be liberated from the tyranny of the Baathists, but I pray it doesn't fall victim to some other evil, because the people of Syria...
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm into that.
I've had a lot.
All right, gents, we're out of time, but I want to go ahead and thank both of you. What an amazing conversation. I wish we had a bit more time to dive into this deeper, but we're going to continue this topic next week. My thanks to Bashar Ali and Robin Yassin for joining us and sharing your perspectives and your analysis so far. Take care, gents. Assalamu alaikum. All right, listeners, this is Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Zafar Iqbal Saab. We're going to be taking a very short break, but coming up after the break, we're looking at how to make a cup of tea. Stay tuned.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Hold your child's hand. Don't let them cross the road alone, or they might not make it to the other side.
How many times have you needed urgent medical supplies but don't know where to go? At Harris Pharmacy, we take pride in delivering a high-level healthcare to our community. This is why we have services such as private one-to-one consultation, free prescription ordering from GP and delivery to your home, mobility aids such as providing wheelchairs and many other items for everyday use. Call us today on free phone 0800 458 2850 to discuss your medical needs. We are open from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Harris Pharmacy, 165 A/B, Dunstable Road, Luton.
Attention drivers! Need new tyres? Ranger Tyres has got you covered with our tyre fitting service. Plus, our mobile tyre fitting brings the shop to you. But that's not all. We offer MOTs, wheel alignments, vehicle servicing and repairs, TPMS diagnostics, and replacement batteries, exhausts, brakes, air conditioning regassing, and number plates. Call 0800 999 2123 or visit rangertyres.co.uk for bookings. Ranger Tyres, the one-stop shop for all your vehicle needs.
আপনি যদি সোশ্যাল হাউজিং এ থাকেন এবং একটি সমস্যা আপনাকে উদ্বিগ্ন করে তাহলে জেনে নিন এটি কিভাবে জানাতে হয়। আপনি যদি আপনার বাড়িওয়ালার কাছে অভিযোগ করে থাকেন এবং আপনি তাদের চূড়ান্ত প্রতিক্রিয়াতে খুশি না হন, আপনি হাউজিং অম্বাজম্যানের কাছে এটি নিয়ে যেতে পারেন। গত বছর হাউজিং অম্বাজম্যান বাড়িওয়ালাদের বাসিন্দাদের ক্ষতিপূরণ হিসেবে 6 মিলিয়ন পাউন্ডের বেশি পরিশোধ করার নির্দেশ দিয়েছিল। প্রত্যেকেরই একটি নিরাপদ ও সুরক্ষিত বাড়ি প্রাপ্য। আপনার অধিকারগুলি জানুন। ভিজিট করুন gov.uk/social housing.
Greystone Solicitors are committed to protecting your rights and fighting your corner to ensure you get the best possible results, specialising in immigration matters, employment issues, family matters, personal injury, medical negligence, civil litigation and housing. Need help with your immigration problem? Greystone Solicitors provide free immigration drop-in clinics every Friday. Call Greystone Solicitors today on 01582 343 453 or visit us at 275 Dunstable Road, Luton, LU4 8BS and begin your journey towards justice today.
Losing a loved one, especially a mother or a father, could mean losing access to safety, education and shelter. We here at Crisis Aid believe that children in the world deserve a better chance at life. Your small donation can influence a big change. Donate today. www.crisisaid.org.uk/orphan fund or call our donations line 0333 305 5000.
Give thanks to Allah for the
Assalamu alaikum. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said in Sahih al-Bukhari, there are two blessings which many people lose. They are health and free time. So make sure you tune into Inspire 105.1 FM, for your health is your wealth, with Sister Shagufta, the health and well-being show which combines rich tradition of Islam with modern scientific knowledge.
Every Friday from 5 p.m.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Back to another edition of Friday Night Live. This is part 2 of tonight's edition. And of course, we're beaming out to the good people of Luton and Surrey News tonight, and also to the good people of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Peterborough, and the Midlands through our partner stations across the nation. A very good evening to all of you on Friday, the 6th of December 2024. I can't read my screen anymore because my eyesight's really going upside down. But what did you think of part one? If you have any comments to make, don't forget you can contact us on 01582 481 822 and speak to Zafar Saab and I live in the studio. Zafar Saab, of course, we just had a very passionate conversation about the situation in Syria. And in case you're tuning in right now, part one was really interesting. We're talking about the developments in Syria and what's happening to the Assad regime. And it looks like they're being kicked out, frankly. And really passionate speeches there. Zafar Saab, your reactions to what's happening in Syria and what you heard from our two guests?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I can get the passion, to be honest, right? And people who are intimately involved in Syria are passionate and should be passionate. But the thing is, Syria is such a tragic story. There's so many ups and downs basically happening in Syria. People are beginning to be a little bit skeptical about what's to come, and what's to come is better than what's already there. Right?
Anything's better than Assad, though. Assad is a brutal dictator, though, right? I mean, he is dirty. He's as dirty as they come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then again, right, these new lot that came in, I think when ISIS came in, from a Muslim perspective, we thought they were bad news, to be honest, right? But deep down, we thought maybe they're better than Assad. They turned out to be horrible, to be honest, even worse.
You mean the so-called ISIS or Islamic State? Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And these labels were placed on them for a particular reason, right? To dirty Islam, to dirty Islamism, and dirty for a particular reason. And you don't know whether the same lot have kind of, been basically moved into a slightly different direction, right? But the objective is still the same, and we don't know what the objective.
So are you saying it's too early to tell who these players are?
Too early to tell who these players are and who their backers are. All of a sudden, right, they're getting huge sums of arms and tanks and armored personnel carriers and all of that. It kind of makes you worry a little bit.
But isn't that something that you're right? But isn't that something that ISIS that was not afforded, and therefore, if Turkey is backing them, this is a Turkish-backed group. It does mean, because Erdogan, we know, is a very smart, shrewd man. He picks his battles very carefully. Clearly, this is almost like a proxy war as well, because if you've got Assad in the middle, but then you've got Russia supporting him. And apparently they had a bombing campaign, an aircraft bombing campaign earlier this week. I think they've been supporting Assad in a limited capacity. Of course, they've got their munitions, own fight with Ukraine, etc., which sounds like it will be drawing to a close once Trump comes in. But nonetheless, it could be that the Turkish-backed forces are moving in now before Trump comes in, whilst Russia is preoccupied with its campaigns in Ukraine. So they're thinking, you know what, strategically, let's go in now in December, because when Trump comes in, Russia may free up its resources and then redirect to Assad. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, potentially it is. It is. They're trying to get there before Trump comes in. Russia has been preoccupied. Hezbollah has been preoccupied as well.
Yeah.
But the key thing is, I mean, I've mentioned that these players are supported by regional powers. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And everyone's got an interest. But key thing is, are those interests aligning with the people of Syria? That's where our connection is with the people of Syria. We want the best for the people of Syria. And if they're replaced, by another set of extremists, basically, whatever the label is, right? The people haven't benefited from that. And how many situations have we been where one set of people have been pushed out, another set of people come in, right? And they turn out to be worse. I mean, we've seen what happened with the Arab Spring in Egypt. A government came in, people were overjoyed.
You mean the Sisi Arab Spring? Yeah. And before you had the Muslim Brotherhood, right?
That's right.
Government, yeah.
That's right. So this could be a precursor to something worse, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's an excuse, right, for another set of forces to come in to say, oh, these are Islamists, therefore we need to go and beat them up. Therefore, that's an excuse for us to put troops on the ground, etc. You don't know what's happening. So
I hear you.
You have to take what's happening with a little bit of skepticism. You have to have passion, but ultimately, I think our allegiance, my allegiance, actually is with the people of Syria.
Without doubt, I think everyone's going to be kind of aligned with the people of Syria, and I think ultimately the entity that loses out are the people. Whoever comes into power, they're going to die. There's going to be casualties. But I think one thing I definitely could feel from our guests, Bashar and Yassin, was definitely. Let me get his name right. Sorry, Robin Yassin, Bashar Ali and Robin Yassin. And by the way, listeners, if you missed that part of the program, you can listen back to tonight's program just by going onto YouTube, typing in Inspire FM Luton, clicking the live tab, and you can watch that segment. Really interesting analysis from our two guests. But one thing I did hear from those two guests, Fasab, was the optimism. Obviously, you're right. There's always an unknown force suddenly coming out of the blue. This force in this case is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. Never heard of them before.
ISIS was the same thing. They came out of the blue, right, and took over huge swathes. And
I remember speaking to people in local mosques and stuff, and they were quite excited by ISIS. Oh, ISIS! They're gonna make things better for the Muslim Ummah. And look how they turned out, as you were saying. They turned out to be tyrants.
Assets of the agencies who gave an excuse for external intervention.
And the thing is, people who are, I think, supporting ISIS at that time of their, can we say, peak of their, the height of their quote unquote success, if we can call it that, weren't necessarily supporting terrorists or terrorism. They were supporting the optimism, right? The optimism for the people of the countries that the so-called ISIS were overtaking, and hoping that things get better for the Muslim people of those countries. But they turned out to be tyrants. They turned out to be unorganized. They turned out to be highly restrictive to both men and women, and highly un-Islamic.
They were acting out the worst possible interpretations of our religion, and making it available to the world, right? So that Islam could be pilloried, basically.
And that's what happened, because what happened is Joe Blogg's John Doe in the UK and US suddenly said, "Oh, this is what Muslims are. This is Islam." Obviously, the media organizations didn't help by calling them Islamic State, right?
It was deliberate. I'll tell you, it was deliberate. It was meant to be like that.
Islamophobia spread, and it all went upside down. But we know the rest is history. And fortunately, by Allah's will, that they are no longer really a major force in any country, though I think they do still exist. And to use Basharat's word, they have kind of mutated into the current entity we're seeing now, HTS. Let's see where it lands. Interesting times ahead. If you want to keep learning about this topic and more, don't forget to tune into next week's edition of Friday Night Live. But now we're going to go straight on to our next topic, which is how to make a good cup of tea. And Zafar, I have been debating this for a long time. I have been a tea drinker since I was probably 15 or 16 years of age.
15 or 16?
I started drinking tea when I was 15, 16, maybe even earlier. Yeah.
Not 4, not 3.
Not 3, no.
Not in your dummy, basically.
Do you know what? Some Pakistani families do actually feed their children tea in a. Are you speaking from experience or? In a bottle?
I can't remember, to be honest. But I've been drinking tea as long as I can remember, but I can't drink it anymore. So there you go.
No problem. Well, I hope that works out well, and maybe we can get you some DT.
Decaf without milk, basically. That's what I can take.
Is that what you can have? Well, you know what? Someone who knows a bit more about tea than certainly you and I, Saab, is an owner of a very popular chai restaurant in Berry Park here in Luton, and he's on the line right now. His name is Atif Rafiq. Atif, assalamu alaikum. Thanks for joining us on the radio.
Walaikum salam. How are you, brother? You okay?
Doing well. How are you? How's your evening going so far at Chai and Chapati, Berry Park?
Alhamdulillah, it's busy. We're not in Berry Park at the moment. We're in Knightsbridge as we're launching our new store there, inshallah.
Amazing, Knightsbridge, amazing. Look forward to, because I know I'm a big Chai and Chapati fan, and obviously you've got one in Berry Park, you've got one in Kingsbury, I believe, and new one in Knightsbridge, going up in the world, mashallah.
Inshallah. Now, it all started off in Luton, alhamdulillah, and the local community really took to our products, and especially our chai, and now it's slowly growing. Moved on to Kingsbury approximately a year and a half ago, and alhamdulillah, in January, inshallah, we'll be opening in Knightsbridge.
Well, congratulations on that. Look forward to hearing more about the updates and the marketing there. I think one thing you guys have done really well is your Instagram wall. Everyone loves that, and I certainly have taken advantage of that with my friends and family. But more importantly, Atif Bhai, we want to talk to you about how to make a good cup of tea. We're not asking you for your recipe. That's going to come after the interview. But what I do want to do, and I know you guys don't use the powdered stuff all the time. You guys have a decent garak tea recipe, but from your, and I know you've done research and you've looked into this, but if we were just to talk about the basics first of all, a typical English cup of tea, how would you describe how to make that? So imagine you're giving a dummy's guide. I happen to be the dummy. And you're telling me how to make a good English, not Pakistani tea or Gurkha tea or anything like that, just a good English cup of tea, first of all. How would you go about making that?
Well, your English tea is fairly simple. Tea bag, hot water, and a drop of milk, and you're there.
Drop of milk.
Proper milk, yes. So cow's milk, and that will give you your English cup of tea very quick. Within 5 minutes, you'll have your nice cup of English chai.
And tell me one thing though, Atif, is that do you normally let it brew before you put the milk in, or do you leave the tea bag in the hot water for a few minutes and let it brew, or do you put the milk in straight away? What's the method that you normally use for your English cup of tea?
Our method for English tea is we put the tea bag in, add the hot water, leave it in the hot water for a short while before we add some milk.
Okay.
And then once the milk is added, we just leave the tea bag in there for the customer to enjoy and remove as they please.
Interesting. So so just want to confirm this. So what I'm hearing from Atif is that to make a good English cup of tea, you have the hot water, you put the tea bag in, you let it brew for a few minutes. Atif, are you willing to share how long you let it brew for? Is it like a minute, 2, 3 minutes?
A minute and a half.
Minute and a half. Okay.
Yep.
And then they add a bit of milk into that, and that is your English cup of tea. And they leave the tea bag in there, chai and chapati, so that the customer can just take it out at their leisure. So far, so good?
Yeah.
All right. Whatever. Let's just continue.
I mean, that's how I would make it, to be honest. Right?
Okay. But I don't leave the tea bag in. That's interesting.
In terms of the milk, right? If I was going to put substitute milk in mine, right? So if I put substitute milk in, it has to be a right color, right? And if that color is just a shade of brown, basically, yeah. And then that's a perfect cup of tea for me if I was going to take it.
Yeah.
But the other products, right, aren't like the English cup of tea. They're brewed. The tea bag and the water is brewed.
Yeah.
And then you have what do you call it? Doodh patti.
I'm going to call it doodh patti. That's my next question to Atif. But Atif, before we go into doodh patti and all the other good stuff that we like in our community, what's a good brand of tea? Like, there's different companies out there that offer tea, and there's PG Tips, there's Yorkshire Tea, there's Tetley, there's Twinings, and there's probably some other brands out there like TWG Tea. You can see I like my tea, and because I've lived in Dubai for a few years, you get inundated with all the different tea brands. Any recommendations? Like, what's your favorite tea brand that you've used and you've had a cup of tea and you're like, you know what, that is really good?
Well, with the English tea, in all honesty, we just use Twinings.
Okay.
Yeah, so we stick to that and keep it quite simple. But with our Gurkha chai and our Desi Pakistani chai, obviously we started with a Gurkha chai in Luton. Obviously, as you know, the brand launched in Luton. We started off with our Gurkha chai, but that proved to be quite strong for some of the Pakistanis out there, as they prefer their traditional Pakistani chai. So we then adapted our recipe. We didn't adapt it. We adapted the original Gurkha chai recipe to introduce the Desi chai. So the Desi chai is like your Pakistani Gurkha chai rather than.
So Atif, what's the difference between a Gurkha chai and the Desi chai? Like, what did you do that's differently? Did you dilute it more, add more milk, or?
Okay, our Gurkha chai contains additional ingredients to the Pakistani Desi chai. It goes through a complete different process. There's a mixture of milks. Takes approximately an hour and a half to cook. So it's not your ordinary kind of tea. Our original Gurkha chai is more like a Qatari Arab kind of Gurkha chai, and our Desi chai is a proper Pakistani Gurkha chai, but it's a very nice.
It's a bit sweeter as well, isn't it? I think
it's a little sweeter, not so strong, not so harsh on the throat. So it's just different. It's lacking some ingredients, which decreases the strength of the tea.
Yeah, got it. You know what? I actually have had your original Gurkha chai, not just from your restaurant, but from other restaurants, and I actually liked that. But I know people who had that with me, and they couldn't hack it. They were like, we were up all night. It really disturbed my sleep, and I slept like a baby after that. So the effects of those different teas have a different effect on different people depending on your palate, etc. As you mentioned, so you guys adapted that and you made the desi chai for the palate of the majority of your customers, which completely makes sense. That's good business sense. You're adapting, you're taking feedback. Amazing. So just tell us about. I want to ask you about another tea, which I know that many people in Luton and listening right now will really appreciate, which is the Kashmiri pink tea. Zafar Saab, right?
Yes, lovely.
Yeah, Zafar Saab likes his good pink tea. So
I used to,
but not anymore. But Atif Bhai, what is the process? And again, you don't have to give me the chai and chapati process, because obviously you guys have your proprietary process. You don't want to give your recipe away. But if I was to make a good Kashmiri pink tea at home, you can get the mixtures, right? I know there's some brands that actually sell the powder, and I'm like because my missus makes an amazing pink tea. She's looked the recipe up online. I know that process also takes time because you have to do something to the tea. Is it correct that you have to actually spill it from height, put it back in the container, and spill it again? Like, what's the correct term to use? I don't know. I know I'm not using the correct term, but how do you make a good Kashmiri pink chai, and how do you get it pink?
The pink comes from a special coloring that we use. Not too much of it, but there's a drop that goes in that makes it the color that it is. Some people use a ready-made powder to produce the Kashmiri pink chai, but I think that takes the taste away. We refrain from using those kind of methods and try and keep everything fresh. And the way we do it, again, the Kashmiri pink chai is about a 3-hour cook. So our Kashmiri chai goes through a thorough process. So we throughout the day, from the time we open to the time we close, every 1.5 hours, somebody's preparing Kashmiri pink chai.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a really big seller in Luton. I mean, maybe because due to the amount of Kashmiris there are in Luton, but
one sec right next to me.
To be honest, I'm a Kashmiri, right? And the first I heard of it about 10 years ago. To be honest. Seriously. This is the other side of the Kashmir, isn't it? It's like coming from Srinagar and places like that. So
but a lot of people really enjoy that tea, to be honest.
But I always thought the pink came as a part of the process, not necessarily adding any coloring. Like if you did it for long enough, the tea automatically became pink. But you reckon, Atif, it's an additive that you add in just to give it that pink touch?
Yes, to give it. Yeah, we add a little bit of coloring to it.
Okay.
To give it that rich pink color.
That's interesting.
It can give you a little bit of pink, but it will never give you the actual rich pink that we try to get to.
Makes sense.
There's lots of ingredients, other ingredients that go into it in order to make it. And you're right about the process. You were demonstrating it quite well. You do have to have someone there with a very large spoon and consistently taking out and pouring back in to get the right blend and to get the right creme on the tea, to be honest. Because the pink tea, our pink tea is what makes it different to a lot of others is it's quite creamy.
Yes, I was going to say that. You have, I think, chai and chapati. I've tried the other brands, whom I won't mention, but they make a pretty good pink tea. But I would say yours has always stood out to me for its creaminess, and that's why I like. And also, it's not too sweet. Like you've got the sweetness just right. I really hate a sweet tea. Too strong. I every time I have your gurk, I always have your sugar-free gurk, but the actual pink tea, what I like about your brand is that it's not too sweet and the creaminess. So I think you got that just right as well, mashallah. Quick question for you. I know this is turning into a tea connoisseurs edition of Friday Night Live, but I'm sure many people are enjoying this, Atif Bhai, and we really appreciate your time as well on what's a busy evening for you, I'm sure, in Knightsbridge, as you get ready for your next door. But what about doodh patti? So for, again, a dummy, me, what is doodh patti? What exactly is that? And what is the method of preparation for that generally?
Doodh patti is referred to as, it's like obviously it derives from Pakistan, and really all it is milk with the tea bag. So hence the name doodh patti. So we don't really you could call it doodh patti. So some people call our desi chai doodh patti because it's the kind of taste that they get from it. But we call it a desi chai because we also add items such as cardamom and cinnamon to the tea, so it becomes almost like a desi curry chai, which is different from the dudh patti. Dudh patti is simply people don't really add anything else to it apart from the milk and the tea bag. In Pakistan, they tend to use buffalo milk for it.
Interesting. Yeah. So I remember when my mum, may Allah be pleased with her, when she was alive, she used to make a dudh patti. She basically used to have the pan, right, and put the milk in, and put the tea, put a few tea bags in, not just one, but a few tea bags she would throw in, and then she would mix it all up. She might have had a bit of lychee as well, like sometimes throw that in for a bit of flavoring, and she would just leave that. Is that the general method?
That is the general method. So people use a little bit of cardamom in there, and the sugar, and they leave it to that. That's as far as it goes. It's quite a quick prep. It's brewed for about 15 minutes, and you can get to the consistency that you want. And you have your dudh patti.
Yeah, and is that what they normally call Pakistani? So when they say Pakistani tea, that's what they mean, right? Dudh patti, generally.
Generally, yeah. I mean, dudh patti. In some households, they'll do the whole karak process and let it brew for a little longer and add a few additional things like the fennel seeds and the cardamom and the cinnamon.
Amazing. I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. What an amazing overview of all the different types of tea. Really appreciate that. But Zafar, have you heard, because as many of you know, I've lived in Dubai for a number of years before I came back to Luton, and there is a tea brand over there called Philly tea. Have you heard of Philly tea?
The only thing I've heard of the tea of those Lipton's tea with camel milk in it. Delicious.
Lipton's a standard tea, but you put camel. Do you know what? I've got to say, and I would love to love Atif Bhai's take on this. Atif Bhai, what's your take on camel milk? What do you think of it?
In all honesty, I've never tried it.
Okay, interesting.
So, I've never had the opportunity. I mean, inshallah, maybe next time I'm out there, I'll give it a go. But yeah, we've never tried it. Never tried it.
Bro. You know why? Because I've had the chance. So I know a really nice Arab brother. And every time I go to Mecca, as much as I can, I go and see him. And he lives on the outskirts of Mecca. So when I go and see him, he takes me to a camel farm. A local nomadic camel farm for nomadic Arab farmers, and they actually take out the milk in front of you from the camel. Literally, it's like going to a McDonald's, but instead of the milkshake coming out of the machine, it's coming out the camel. So they squeeze it out in front of you into a metal pan. And what's amazing about the camel milk is that it's frothy naturally. So as they're squeezing the udder of the camel, it's literally just coming out, and there's a natural, as they say in our language, kudrati froth that's coming out naturally. And when I had that without any preservatives or boiling it or anything like that, literally I had it fresh from the udder, and it was amazingly naturally sweet. It had a natural sweetness to it, and that was camel milk in a nutshell. And then I had the camel milk chocolate, which was disgusting, not from the nomads, but in the local mall opposite Masjid al-Haram, which is really bad, but that's where I had that. But yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to know if Chai Chapati is going to launch a camel tea karak.
Inshallah.
That's a new idea maybe to implement.
All right.
But yeah, we've implemented a lot in the tea industry. I mean, we've added things like red velvet, Kashmiri and stuff like that. So,
well, Atif Bhai, you're amazing, and nice to meet the owner of Chai Chapati. Finally, we really appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Take care. Assalamu alaikum. Well, there you have it. That amazing conversation. There's also we have another topic very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. You only left a minute for it, to be honest.
Completely forgot.
Topic close to my heart.
I was so good at this, but we had to continue. But anyway, go on. Yeah.
All right. So, inshallah, next Thursday evening, 6:00, is Rishta Networking event again.
Rishta Networking.
Yes. It's an event for local people and people from around the region, basically, to take, their daughters and sons and whatever to the event and look for potential candidates for them, potential suitors for them.
So when is that happening? Thursday?
Next Thursday, 6:00.
Next Thursday. So let me get the right date for that. So that's on Thursday, the 14th. Oh, sorry, right. No, it's not. That's the wrong calendar. I've got
13th.
13th. Thursday the 13th.
Huh? 12th. 12th. Get it right, man. 12th.
I can't read the fingers. Thursday, the 12th of December, 2024.
That's right.
So if you have anyone who is looking for a suitor, male or female,
register on a website, resetnetworking.org, and then the instructions are there.
There we go.
resetnetworking.co.uk.
All right.
And the details are on that page there.
Thank you, Assad. Well, that's the end of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live. Listeners, we'll see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.